Welcome in, welcome in. Friday night before the Super Bowl means it's time for DFS Chalk Talk, brought to you by Triple Play Fantasy, and we get it rolling. Oh, yes, indeed. It's time to get out of that kitchen and rattle those pots and pans. I am your host, Jeff Mesha. As always, I've got with me Joseph. Haters gonna hate Ayarachi. What's happening, Joe?
Oh, the Swifties are out in full force this weekend, my friend. Let me tell you. Nothing like marking out with my 12-year-old as she announces her new album during the Grammys, and then immediately spending 45 minutes in a Ticketmaster line on our website just to pre-order the goddamn album.
I mean, I tell you, but that has brought along a brand new fan base for the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL alone. I can't wait to see the numbers or the viewership of this Super Bowl. It's going to be off the charts. I have to think so. And usually with us is Mikey. Just before the show, he had to jump out real quick. He had children at home, and he's solo, so we didn't necessarily want to stick him on the Super Bowl show, feeding his newborn and getting him involved. But he'll be chiming in on some of the chat, and he's always with us in spirit. Period. So usually on this show we get into the everything DFS. Now it's not your usual slate. It's the Super Bowl. It's the one game slate, which makes it that much more difficult to pick a lineup, especially with these two teams. You have the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers. And this is going to be an interesting matchup. I've got a lot of opinions on this game. I'm sure you got a lot of hype and a lot of opinions there, Joe. I mean, you got to be a little bit excited about the game coming up.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's going to be a really good game, a really close game. I mean, what have we learned from these playoffs? The 49ers have hung by a thread a couple straight weeks, could easily be Detroit in this game tonight. And then the other thing is, out of all of the phenomenal quarterback play we've seen from a bunch of different players this year, in the end, they have all, including Purdy, although it hasn't cost Purdy yet, they have all made one major mistake that A, cost them their game, and that B, Patrick Mahomes has not made yet. And it's just, at this point, it's, from a betting perspective, it's not pretty, and it's not always fantasy. Mahomes won't be the first quarterback picked in any fantasy leagues next year. But, man, it's hard to bet against him at this point, even against that 49er team.
Very true. I'll tell you, and before the season got underway, I said two things. One of them was by accident, and the second one was on purpose. The accident was, I don't know if you recall this show, I said Patrick Mahomes has won 3 Super Bowls, and obviously that was not true at the time, but I believe it to be foreshadowing. And then Don Purpose one, as I said, the curse of Kyle Shanahan is real. He was the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons, up 28-3. They lost. He was the head coach when the 49ers were up against these Kansas City Chiefs by 10 in the fourth quarter. They lost. And I have to think that he's going to be on the wrong side of the scoreboard again. Kyle Shanahan will not win one. I think the Kansas City Chiefs come out on top, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I don't know what your takes or your thoughts on that are, but that's just my feelings about this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. I think the 49er roster, 1-53, is stronger than the KC roster, but that one at the top, I think, again, Mahomes has just proven to be better than anybody else in his way so far. And the thing about Purdy is, and I like Purdy from a fantasy perspective, especially if you think the Chiefs are going to win the game. Purdy's going to have to throw in the second half. But he is just, the last 8 quarters he's played, he's looked pretty shitty for like 5 to 6 of them. And then he's had a couple of big fourth quarters that have won them those last 2, games at home against inexperienced teams. They won't be at home here. They're certainly not going against an inexperienced team. So it'll be interesting to see where the rub is there. But what we have showing right now is we've got the Fanduel screen up for the single game. It's, you select your MVP who scores 1.5, and then for any flex players, you have your salary cap. So, right off the bat, Mace, let's start. And we're going to do a DraftKings 1-2. So, knowing we're doing both. And the one thing we did talk about is how to handle McCaffrey. And we decided that we're going to play McCaffrey as the captain spot, the MVP spot on FanDuel. Major difference between single game contests on FanDuel and DraftKings. You do not pay extra for the person you put in the MVP spot on FanDuel. You do pay extra on DraftKings. So we are keeping that in mind. So we're starting with McCaffrey here. Even against a good Chief defense, there's no reason to think he doesn't hit the end zone at least once and get close to 100 all-purpose yards. Kind of a no-brainer. So I'll defer to you now. After having McCaffrey, where do you think it's most important to go here?
To me, my next one that first came to mind was Isaiah Pacheco, and I say that because the 49ers in the two playoff games have shown that you can run on them. They've allowed 318 yards on 57 carries. It's 5.6 yards per carry. The Chiefs have been relying on the run game more since I forget which game it was back on Christmas Eve where they lost, and I think Andy Reid kind of changed his game plan and went with the run a little bit more, and Pacheco has shown to be that guy. So to me, I think Pacheco is the next guy in line. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I mean, he's got, and I would love to see some of the other backs. He's got 63 carries in the playoffs so far, going for a little under 300 yards, and he's got 3 touchdowns, another 6 targets, 6 receptions, and 6 targets. So, I mean, he is such a prevalent part of the offense. It feels like the ball's either being thrown to Kelsey or handed off to Pacheco. So, and to your point, the San Francisco rush defense has shown to be a little suspect. So I am okay with that play completely. So we're 2 guys in. We got Pacheco and McCaffrey, the 2 running backs. Our average salary left is $10K. Knowing we will need a cheap guy, I just don't think you can have a lineup here without Travis Kelsey. And, another sign that just reminds me of the Patriots with this Chiefs team is all season long, and especially when you're thinking about statistics and prop bets and fantasy stats, the Chiefs were really frustrating. Mahomes was frustrating. The second half of the year, Kelsey was very frustrating. I mean, he went 1, 2, 3, 4. He went almost 10 games without surpassing like 11 points. But then what has happened the last 2 weeks when it counts the most? He's gone for 16 receptions, 191 yards, and 3 touchdowns. They're obviously going to force feed him the ball. I feel like even a bad game for him probably does okay from a fantasy perspective. So we've got Kelsey, Pacheco, and McCaffrey. We got 2 spots left for 8,500. So at least for one of them, we need to dip down. And so let's go at the bottom here. And, you see Justin Watson at 6,500. You see Hilaire at 6,500. But I almost challenge us to go lower. And when you think about Watson and Hilaire, you're literally looking for a couple of catches, some yardage. Hilaire has a small chance of getting in the end zone, but probably not. But then when you look at, and I'm just going to throw this out here, I'll start with Noah Gray, who's 5,500. He had 5 targets last week, 3 the week before, 5 catches in these 2 games. They didn't hit the end zone. But again, for 5,500, there is some value there. But the one that really intrigued me, and I'd love to know your thought, Kyle Juszczyk. This guy, I didn't quite realize, the last 2 games, he's gone 2 for 33 and 3 for 23. As you know, he had that huge catch on either 3rd or 4th down against Detroit that kept one of their last drives going. He does sniff the end zone throughout the year too. He's 2 touchdowns. So I almost feel like I wouldn't mind plugging in one of these 5,500 guys and seeing if it's worth it to do that flexibility wise in that last spot or not. What do you think?
So I certainly won't disagree with you as far as having to get somebody that low. What I will say is, and I'm kind of going all in on Kansas City this game, and you can disagree if you like, just because the Chiefs defense, I think, is playing the best that they have played all season. They're really just kind of just peaking at the very right time. And again, this is just kind of gut feeling. I think San Francisco gets in the end zone, and McCaffrey's going to get one of those. I'm going to go with maybe Debo, but for me, Andy Reid is kind of and Patrick Mahomes too, kind of a get right kind of scheme a little bit, and I'm almost going to go with McCole Hardman. Now I know that in the last game, it almost cost him. Excuse me, in the Buffalo game, it almost cost him with the fumble at the end zone. And I know he hasn't had many targets, and I know he hasn't had many catches or anything for that matter. This is just simply gut feel, because are they going to throw to MVS maybe twice? They're going to throw to Justin Watson, not seemingly. Are they going to throw to Kadarius Toney? Absolutely not. Tyreek Hill isn't walking through that door. I don't know. This is just gut feel, Joe, and I get what you're saying with Jusic. For me, if we're going that low, I don't know. This is just simply gut feel and the way the Chiefs defense is playing.
I got you. It's funny. If Toney was inactive again, I'd feel better about Hardman, because I would believe he would at least for sure get a couple of chances. I'm just afraid with Toney active, and maybe they try Toney once and he breaks a run. I'm afraid that Hardman doesn't even see more than a snap or two. But I do believe we want to go this low. I would rather hang my hat on one of these guys at 55 than spend the extra 1,000 at 65, still wishing for the same thing. I get what you're saying on Hardman, but I think I want to go Jusic here because he's the same price and he's just got a little bit more proven productivity on a week-to-week basis. We know that he plays, A, he's on the field for a lot of snaps, and B, he's kind of a security blanket for Purdy. I'd feel a little better about Jusic.
Yeah,
that leaves us 11-5, and I'll let you make this choice here because you mentioned Debo before. If we go Jusic, or for that matter, you could go Hardman, and then you're able to pick between Samuel, Rice, and Ayuk, which is actually pretty nice.
So for me, then, if this is the case, because of actually the argument I just mentioned, I'm going to go Rice. Like I said, I think Debo will get his touches. And again, I'm just going to go back to the same argument. I think the Chief defense is really going to step up this game. And I think that their offense, Rice is kind of, been the number one guy. They really didn't have a number one guy coming into the season outside of Kelsey, but at the wide receiver position, certainly not a number one. And Rice is really the guy. So again, one more just gut feel of this game, Rashee Rice. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, my thoughts is, so you're telling me you would want to go Jusic with Rice or Hardman with Debo. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yes.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we meet in the middle? Because even Noah Gray is guaranteed to get you more looks than Hardman. And he can get in the end zone too. So why don't we go the route of going Gray, and then I'll give you Debo.
All right, I'm okay with that. I'm good with that.
So we end up with a lineup that's 3 KC guys, 2 San Fran. You got McCaffrey in the MVP spot. You get Kelsey, you get Pacheco, you get Debo. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal, that top 4, other than the quarterbacks, obviously. And then you got Noah Gray at 5,500. So before I hit save on this, my question, and this is the one thing that I've struggled with the most, because I really do feel like McCaffrey and Kelsey are the 2 most important guys to have going into the game. But that being said, if you go both of those guys, it's real hard to fit in a quarterback. Are you okay with a lineup with neither quarterback, or do you prefer each of your lineups to have one of the QBs?
It's funny because when I was putting a lineup together before this, and it looks a little bit different, but in both those lineups, actually, I didn't have either quarterback because neither one has been outstanding. You have Mahomes, who's done well. 20 in the playoffs. Right. Has done well, not great. Purdy's done well, not great. Right. And I'm okay with not having either one of those guys. If you're telling me this is Patrick Mahomes of last year, or if you're telling me that this was Josh Allen who got to the Super Bowl, this is a different story. But neither one of these guys has been phenomenal, and we know in these one game scenarios here on FanDuel or DraftKings, if you don't hit that MVP spot on, then you're toast. So, and I don't think you can go wrong with McCaffrey, period, just because he's simply going to get the touches. So I'm okay with not having a quarterback.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we've got the four most important players that aren't quarterback from a offensive perspective. I think that's a pretty good lift. So this is it. This is official for FanDuel. McCaffrey in the MVP spot. Pacheco, Kelsey, Noah Gray, and Deebo Samuel. You've used all of your salary. That being said, we are going to now switch over, and let's give the people give some eyes a break a little bit. Juice Chick is plus 500 anytime to yeah. I'll tell you another thing about Juicic and the prop bets. His yardage is 4.5. That's his prop yardage. The guy's gone for 20 something both playoff games for them. So just a little prop bet right there. Mikey's on it right there. I agree 100%. So now we're going to hit DraftKings. We're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to do it with the DraftKings lineup. The DraftKings lineup, it's a little different. You can't really just lock and lift and load from what we just did. And the reason being is whoever you put in, what did I just do there? Whoever you put in your captain spot, you pay the extra salary for. So, I mean, I would play McCaffrey in every lineup, but I would probably say that for DraftKings, I wouldn't put him in the captain spot to save some money. So the first question that we need to answer here is who goes in this captain spot for us? For me, knowing that we're not going to put McCaffrey in it because we did that on FanDuel, I think I'd have to go Kelsey or Purdy, but I'd be interested to see what you think.
My first thought was either Kelsey or Pacheco. So with both of us thinking Kelsey, maybe we go Travis Kelsey. And I know you mentioned some of the stats, but you didn't include the Miami game, which also saw him with some targets and receptions too. So that's 27 targets, 23 receptions in the last 3 games to 262 yards. So the guy's been a force in the playoffs, and there's no reason to think he's slowing down. It seems like he's got something to prove. This might be his last hurrah before he fills in Taylor Swift's blank space, for lack of a better term. All those Swifties out there like that little reference. So what are your thoughts about Kelsey?
That's a good one. But it's interesting. I was just thinking though too. He's had all 3 of those games were bad weather games. You were 0 degrees and a negative wind chill home against Miami. You were a snow game in Buffalo, and then you were rain and just cold in Baltimore. So he's going to actually have his first good weather game, and he's been good in the bad weather ones. So that makes me feel okay there. So let me ask you this. Are we punting McCaffrey totally, or are we getting him in here now? Or do we feel like – so I think Mahomes is the better quarterback, but I actually believe Purdy's going to have the better fantasy game. So I think the next question we have to ask ourselves is, are we playing McCaffrey, or are we not going to play McCaffrey at all? And then in that case, I think we could get Purdy in.
Well, I'm going to go with McCaffrey because I think he's going to have more impact than anybody on that team. And I'm going to maybe disagree that Purdy's going to be blitzed by Steve Spagnuolo all game. Yeah, we've seen the Chiefs. Can you run on them a little bit? Yeah, the Bills did a nice job with it. Baltimore, #1 run game, not so much, and they had to throw to get back into it, which they had a little bit of success with, but not a ton. So I'm foreshadowing Purdy having a 195-yard game with 2 touchdowns and maybe 1 or 2 picks. That's what I'm seeing in Purdy's. I don't think he has a game that maybe Mahomes has in him. That's just my thought on it.
Yeah. I think my problem with Mahomes is he's been phenomenal, but it doesn't translate fantasy-wise because, A, they're super efficient at this point. It's so much like the Patriots. It's so much like the Patriots during their heyday because for most of those years, other than the Randy Moss year, they didn't translate fantasy-wise, but they just won and won and won. And that's what Mahomes is doing. Mahomes hasn't gone over 20 fantasy points yet in the playoffs, but they win. We talked about all the touches Pacheco's getting. but maybe we lay off quarterback on both lineups completely. So let's move on. We've got to go with a cheap guy here. We're at 5,600 for an average, and we still got 4 left. So, in the spirit of the fact that we went Noah Gray on that last one, I'm going to let you have the pick of the litter here. Where do you want? I mean, just at $800 here. That's insane.
Well, let me ask this,
and then for the cheaper guy.
Let me ask this, and I'm not a DraftKings guy. Where does Harrison Butker fall as far as salary on there? Is he higher?
Yeah,
does DraftKings feel the way I feel?
5,000. The kickers are 5,000 and 5,200.
So that's a little bit higher than.
I mean, what about this? How about? Yeah, it's all relative. You like Butker, is what you're saying? I
do.
So why don't we try this? Let's try this real quick. Let's go Butker. Let's go Jissick because we went Gray in the other one. So now with those 2 cheap plays, now we're back up to 84.50 as an average with 2 left. So now we get to make the decision again. Do we want to go a quarterback or do you go Debo and Rice?
I'd feel better. I'd feel better about that than having either one of these quarterbacks. It might be taboo not to have a quarterback in FanDuel or DraftKings, but to me, that's in my heart, that's kind of the right play, seemingly, or just based on what we've seen from these 2 guys that just haven't put up the numbers, but the other guys are very capable of doing that.
Yeah. So a couple questions here. If we went Purdy, you could still get Kittle in. So you would go Purdy and Kittle. If you go Debo, you could go Debo and Rice. Or you could go Ayuk and Pacheco. Or you could go Pacheco and Rice. I mean, we got some serious options here. So we had Pacheco and Debo in our FanDuel lineup. Who do you feel better about playing twice, Debo or Pacheco?
I like Pacheco better just because of the volume that I think he's going to get. Of course, Debo's a weapon, but you still have to satisfy McCaffrey. If you think that Kittle's going to do anything, then some targets have to go his way. Ayuk, some have to go his way. So just from a volume standpoint, I think Pacheco has to be the better play. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if it was play Pacheco twice versus playing Debo 0 times, I'd go 1 and 1. Seeing we already have Samuel there, I think the fact that we just showed the numbers of the sheer touches that Pacheco is getting, it makes it hard to resist. So now we're in a real situation because, I think Rice for 7,600 is better value than Ayuk at 88. What do you think?
Agreed wholeheartedly, especially given what I think is going to happen in this game, which I think is going to be a Kansas City Chiefs win. So
this is what I'm going to do now because we're at the point where, I would hit save on this lineup and feel pretty good, but we got 1,300 left still. So let's just, and there's nothing really to do. 64 does, but 63 doesn't. One more 100 and we could go from Butker to George Kittle, but we don't have that unless we took Kelsey out. Let's just play with something real quick. So you got Kelsey. So let's go Pacheco. You feel okay with Pacheco in the captain spot?
I'm good with that. My initial gut was either Kelsey or Pacheco. So if that helps us out salary wise, and the Pacheco volume, I'm okay with that. They're both going to get their points, I think.
So now if we do that, and now we go Kelsey. Now we got 7,400. We got Kittle. Got it. We still have 1,000. What do you do? I mean, is there better play than Jersic at 1,800? Or you go back to Gray or Hardman or Tony or Hilaire?
Tony, I don't think he's going to see the field. Hilaire, he'll probably be eating bonbons on the sidelines, dude. I don't think he's going to see much either. So
Well, Hilaire's gotten one. Yeah, I mean it's 2 targets last week, 2 catches, but it's not a lot.
No. So
you leave the grand on the table?
yeah, I mean, again, and this came up with a handful of shows. Is this one of the traps you don't want to fall into? Is trying to use all the salary and sacrificing, who you might think is the best fit in a lineup. So I mean, I think it's okay to leave it a little bit on the table to me.
I mean, we got 5 bombs and then Jursic, so it's not. Yeah, I don't feel bad about this one at all either. I think
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think this is the one. So for DraftKings, we got Pacheco in the captain spot, McCaffrey, Kelsey, Jursic, Kittle, and Rice. I like. All right, so I like it.
I'm good with. Lock it in, and then what I'd love to see is whether it's in the comments on YouTube, Twitter, or whatever it may be. Give us if you like it, give us a thumbs up. If you dislike it, give us a thumbs down. I'm cool with that. Just throw in what you would have done, and then before we get out of here, game wise. So and I brought this up a few times. To me, it's going to be the Kansas City dynasty starts Sunday night. I think it's going to be Kansas City Chiefs 26, San Francisco 24. I'm going to go with Harrison Butker having 4 field goals. And MVP is going to go to Travis Kelce. What do you got? Any gut feelings?
Yeah, I'm like 24-23 Kansas City. In the end, I can't. I'm not going to sit here and bet on Mahomes making a mistake until he makes one. I think the 49ers have a better roster, 2-53, but I think Mahomes is just an X factor that we should say we haven't seen in decades, but we are just coming out of seeing this. And to your point, it looks like we're starting to see it again. So I think it's going to be a great game, and I think the Chiefs are going to win it by a pubic hair. And I think it's going to be a good watch with a really bad halftime show.
I mean, another conspiracy theory. Taylor Swift jumps in on the halftime show and just helps out Usher.
I will mark out if that happens. I will be the happiest Swiftie on the planet.
That is set up to line up nicely, my friend. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned the Mahomes thing, and I just want to throw this out because this is something I heard either today or yesterday. If you switch quarterbacks, if you take Mahomes and put him on San Francisco, don't change teams, just change quarterbacks. That's a 2 touchdown spread, right? You can't do that the other way around. So the Mahomes factor is such a big deal that I think that's a spot on analysis, and that's how good San Francisco's lineup is. But they're coming up against one of, if not the best to do it, and a defense that's as hot as any defense out there.
Well, maybe San Francisco will get lucky and Mahomes will get a call on his cell phone around 10 p.m. that his dad needs a ride home. He'll have to leave the game.
You had to take it there, bro. You had to. You do that, and I was doing Swift jokes all night. So.
More props to Patrick Mahomes, the football player, because it's starting to be very clear that he got a level of class injected in him that the rest of his immediate family may not have.
Indeed. And we saw that with the chest bumping with his wife and everything else. But I'll tell you, we'll leave that to everybody else to see that I'm sure that everybody will get pissed off for the 25 seconds. We'll see Taylor Swift on screen during the Super Bowl. So we'll leave that to the Twitter folks there. And I tell you, we will be on top of Dynasty in the offseason. This kind of wraps it up for the 2023-2024
what a season. First
season of DFS Chalk Talk. In my opinion, could not have gone any better. Again, we wish Mikey was here. We know why he can't be, and this guy's a vital part of the show. We appreciate everything that Triple Play Fantasy has done and appreciate the opportunity. But this has been a great first season, Joe. I'm looking forward to the next one.
It's been a crazy year. I'll tell you, I'll leave you one stat to look at. If you think about draft day of your fantasy leagues or week 1 of doing DFS and you're looking at it now, the quarterback scoring was so down this year versus A, where we thought it would be, and then B, even down from the last few previous years. And if you take out rushing If you take out the Allens and the Jalen Hurts and the Lamar Jacksons and these quarterbacks that were running for a lot of yards and a lot of points, take out the rushing, the passing stats alone were down more than we've seen in like the past 5 years. So that's already making me think and spinning my wheels for next year how to handle that.
No, never a dull moment, man. So we'll see what happens Super Bowl 58, and then we will be on to dynasty leagues in the off season. So catch us on Twitter and YouTube and everywhere else. And like I said, we always appreciate the feedback. So until next season or until we hit dynasty, we got you covered.